Hello and welcome to Sri Lanka at 99.94 Cricket Every Day. I'm Mark Machado from the Merrily End, and I'm joined, as always, by Estelle Devon from the Papare, live and direct from Perth. This is Sri Lanka at 99.94, your new home for Sri Lanka content, and we'll be dropping into your podcast feed and on YouTube or the 99.94 app several times every week. So please do rate, review, subscribe, tell your friends, tell your family, tell everyone you know that the Sri Lanka on 99.4 podcast is here to enjoy. Also, if you get a chance, go check out the Mitch Johnson show where the former Aussie Quick talks about his life and cricket. You can find it wherever you listen to your podcast or on YouTube. Thank you for joining Cricket's Conversation. I was listening to the second episode, which is actually the first episode of the Mitchell Johnson's show earlier today. This is obviously before Australia were playing Sri Lanka, just to get myself into that kind of mindset of talking about Australian cricket and Australian fast bowlers and all that stuff. And it's very good and an essential listen. Estelle, we're not here to talk about Mitchell Johnson, though. We are here to dissect. Well, I say Sri Lanka's first two games in the Super 12, but really we're recording this about 2 hours after Sri Lanka's defeat to Australia at Perth. God, where do we start with it? Because there was points of that game when I thought Sri Lanka have got this, they can win this, and they still managed to lose it. In the end, the scorecard, and I suppose at the end of the day for future generations, it's only the scorecard that matters, will show quite an emphatic win for Australia. But actually, there's quite a lot of positives as well, right? You were in the stadium. What was it like inside the stadium, and what was the initial kind of reaction as Marcus Stoinis? Oh, sorry, no, it wasn't Stoinis who hit it. It was Aaron Finch who actually hit the winning runs. But as the winning runs were hit,
There was quite a decent Sri Lankan crowd in as well. So unfortunately, they didn't get a win. But of course, the party continued outside. I mean, those are the Sri Lankan fans who come to games, right? Um, yeah, it's kind of disappointing overall because, like you said, there were points where Sri Lanka, I wouldn't say like they were going to win, but there were really points where it seemed like this is going to be a really close game. Unfortunately, finished like in a big hurry in the end, and that might come back to haunt Sri Lanka if it does come down to net run rate. So that's going to be maybe another issue. So that kind of put a dampener on things because the overall performance was pretty decent. There were obviously areas that need to improve, and we will talk about that. But yeah, overall, kind of disappointing the way it ended because, like you said, at the end of the day, the scorecard would reflect the comfortable win for Australia. When I don't think at any point they felt really comfortable until Stoinis came to the crease.
Yeah, let's talk about Sri Lanka's batting first. We made 157 for 6 at the end. There was a point when I thought SL were actually going to go and get a huge total and get closer, about 170, 180. It didn't quite work out like that. The Kusal Mendes lost his wicket early. Patam Nissanka stuck around for a long time. DDS was in the runs, and Charith Asalanka actually ended up making, had a very handy nog. But it was really our kind of big hitters who, yet again, didn't really make too many runs today. Is this becoming a bit of a problem for us?
Yeah, I'd say so in the World Cup at least, because we haven't seen any performances from Bhanuka, Dasun, or Vanindu. So it's tough to say that. I mean, that's where things went wrong for Sri Lanka because I feel like they seem to be the tactic seems to be to kind of bat slow, bat steady the first 10 overs, get to 60 to 70 runs, and then kick on from there. Which I guess then leaves you open to this kind of total where you just finish with about 150. You've still got 90 of the last 10, but it's not really like a winning total. It's about par. I think below par in Perth at least. So the big hitters, the problem is it seems like none of the three are able to kind of get even a single like good knock in. So that's got to be a major concern, because that it's funny, that's the area which Sri Lanka were kind of banking on coming into this tournament, because you've seen Banuka and Dasun get a lot of runs in the last couple of months. Um, what's worrying to me is also the fact that they've kind of not been striking it at a good rate either. So I mean, you get out for 6 or 10 or 12 or whatever, it's fine. But they've also used up balls in those latter stages of the innings. So that's a bit concerning, I would say. And I think that also comes down to the fact that the top order is kind of eaten up 10 to 12 overs. And then when the middle order also takes up a few overs here and there, then you're left with hardly any time to get any runs. So yeah, I think Sri Lanka will be really concerned. It's a funny thing, isn't it? Like, coming into this tournament, we were worried about number 3, number 4. That seems to have sorted itself out. Now the new worry is 5, 6, 7. So what do we do now?
I wonder if they've got to mix up a little bit. And actually, today would have been one of those days where you could have sent Banu in before you set at 3 almost, or 4, and given him that little bit more time. But I mean, there's so much discourse on social media right now about this and about Patham's 40 or 45 and his low strike rate. Are we starting too slowly? Is that the problem? I still think with the player, like, if you just watch the way Patham Nissanka plays cricket, he's got the ability. He's got, and if he can match the temperament and get the experience and grow into being the professional he needs to be, he could be as great as any batsman Sri Lanka's ever produced in the past, right? So I mean, you kind of don't want to ever drop him. Kusal Mendes has been an incredible touch. I mean, I know he only got 4 runs today or 5 runs today, but that 1-4 he scored looked incredible. But he's the highest run scorer, or he was after the Island game in the tournament so far. And DDS and Aslanka looked incredible today. So I don't know what the solution is. I don't know if it's a case of, it looks to me like with definitely with Dustin and Barnacle, I think they were just trying to get going from the get-go, and actually they maybe need to take a couple more balls before they started doing it. Hasaranga, I just think you've got to write today off for him, because we'll talk about what happened when we started bowling, but that wasn't great for him with the ball or trying to hit the ball either. But his batting is so erratic, right? Every time he has a great innings, me and you come on and we're like, I'm like open the batting with him. You're like batting at 3, you're batting at 4, but actually he's way too inconsistent in real terms, right? And that's why me and you are on this side of the microphone and not in the dugout sitting next to Mahela and Chris Silverwood, because we would offer terrible advice. But I think they've got to try and do something. They've got to pick themselves up, because what we saw today, I think, will be the way teams come at them in general. Not in general. I think that's the way England and New Zealand will try and play cricket against SL. And I think there was 2 reasons why Australia won today, in my opinion. Firstly, they were just much more aggressive when they were batting, and secondly, Sri Lanka were on one leg because of all the injuries. Let's take a quick break and let's talk about the bowling when we get back.
You're listening to Cricket's Conversation on 99.94. Whatever your team, we have the show for you on podcast, YouTube, or on the 99.94 app. We have India, England, South Africa, West Indies, and now Sri Lanka covered. If you want to find us, the best way is to follow us on social media at 9994DM by downloading the 9994 app, or Google 99.94 on podcast. We speak cricket.
So Estelle, 157. You kind of think this is a decent total to defend. It can be done. Sri Lanka kind of start off very brightly in the power play. However, there is another disaster 5 balls in after as Benura Fernando has to go off and can't complete his innings. You can almost hear I think it was his hamstring pop. I say you hear it, you couldn't hear it. It looked like it was his hamstring popping, and DDS had to finish the over. Do you have any update on the injury? And has Chris Silverwood been in touch about calling you up?
Yeah, I don't have any update on it because obviously the team is a bit quiet about things until they have some kind of confirmation. But it didn't look good, and knowing Bino Fernando's kind of injury history, he's playing international cricket for the first time since February, right? So he's had just a spate of injuries between then and now. And to be honest, he never looked like he would be able to last the tournament because he just didn't look 100%, particularly in the field. He looked like he was struggling even from the first game he played. So it was almost kind of inevitability or just seeing how long he can last. So that I'm not expecting good news on that front. I think it's most likely that he won't be available at least for a couple more games. And then that's basically the end of the tournament, right? Sri Lanka have 3 more to come. So, yeah, like you said, Sri Lanka playing on, I don't know even if you can even call it one leg, right? Because coming into this World Cup, we are excited thinking this is potentially going to be the fastest bowling lineup Sri Lanka have ever fielded. And then
it was so fast we couldn't see it.
-1, Dilshan Madhushanka is gone. Exactly. Just I don't even have. Everyone has different opinions on what's going on. None of it makes sense. Nothing is like makes logical sense when you think about it. But something. What are you supposed to do when you've like already given up 3 bowlers, 3 fast bowlers, almost 4, right? Pramod Bhadshan is also carrying a niggle. So, it's tough. On the batting front, though, I forgot to mention before, like one thing maybe you can give some leeway to the likes of Nisanka was the fact that it wasn't easy coming in and facing that kind of bowling on that track. Even the Aussies struggled, right, against Kumara with that pace. So Sri Lanka historically struggle against bouncy on bouncy surfaces and quick surfaces. So it wouldn't have been easy coming in. And I think someone like Charita Solanka does kind of enjoy those kind of conditions. So that's the only thing you can kind of give them. So on the bowling front as well, again, Kumara was phenomenal. I think that's maybe one of the best spells I've seen him bowl. But at some point, it's going to hurt the surviving bowlers having guys drop off every game.
Yeah, so I think the problem is when Benero goes off, it basically means that everyone who can bowl any sort of decent level, and at that point you're looking at Kumara, you're looking at Dasan Charmaka, DDS, and the 2 spinners are basically all gonna. What's that? 5 of them, right? They're all gonna have to bowl out to get to 20 overs. So at that point, they can't afford a mistake. They can't afford somebody to have an off day. What happens is, and again, I know there's a lot of discourse online about this, but Hasaranga has a off day. It was the worst possible pitch for him. And then there's nothing else. There's no way they can change it because to get to 20, they've all got, I don't know, maybe Asalanka might have fancied an over or 2, and maybe just the fact that no one's seen him do much for the last, I can't remember the last time he bowled.
You know what the funny thing is, though, is that before the game, when they were warming up, so they were all like doing spot bowling, and Mahesh Tikshana could not get anything to land on the cones they had set.
Yeah.
He was either way too full or way too short, right? Hasaranga pitched everything exactly on those cones, exactly where they want he was trying to pitch them. And then come game time, everything is the other way around. Tikshana was brilliant in his first 2 overs, went for I think 3 runs in 2 overs, and then I mean that kind of touch Stoinis was in. There's nothing really that he could do. But Hasaranga just wasn't able to find a good pace, wasn't able to find a good length to bowl. He started off with a really short delivery, I think, and those lengths kind of he just could not find it. It's so strange. It's strange because where have you seen that from Hasaranga? I've seen him bowl one bad over. I have never seen him bowl like a 3 over or 4 over spell that's been this bad.
I think with both of our spinners, I think they're real deep thinkers of what who they're bowling to, what they might do. And I think sometimes Hasaranga tries to buy a wicket. Today he definitely tried to buy a wicket, and it's just one of those days where I just don't think anything came off for him. I noticed the snake ball wasn't used at all. I imagine on the pitch, I was surprised before the game if he'd brought the snake ball out, but after the Ireland game, I was like, the snake ball could be the ball of this tournament, right? If Estelle do something, but yeah, I just think the pitch, the conditions, everything just weren't aligning for Hasaranga today. He probably hasn't had such a bad day at the office since that ill-fated tour to England last May, where he played in some very unfriendly pitches to him. I think, as I say, I think we're just going to hope when we get to Sydney and Brisbane that the pitches aren't a little bit more Hasaranga friendly, let's say. But I think the bigger problem is we say we're playing on one leg. I thought our fielding was showing up a little bit today as well. I'm not talking about the drop catches, because I think if you look at Ashwin Bandara's drop catch, he kind of makes up for it by catching the very next ball, and getting Maxwell out. If you were going to pick two at the time, Maxwell or Finch, then Maxwell was definitely the more important player to get out. Dasan Shanaka dropped one quite early on. That was Warner, wasn't it? That in the end didn't really make much of a difference. I think part of the problem is because we're carrying injuries in the team. I think they're having to hide players. I think that's an issue. It's so obvious that if the batter manages to find one of the players that's hidden, that player doesn't like being anywhere near the ball. Though that said, Barnaka Rajapaksa did take a catch today, and it was a nice catch. But I think some of the Sri Lanka's fielding has improved a heck of a lot in the last few months. We won that Asia Cup final off the back of very good fielding. And the fielding, in previous games has been really good. But Australia, when you're playing in Australia, particularly when you're playing in Perth, then you've got all those things you've got to be on top of your game for. And that's when your professionalism in terms of, do you work in your fielding? How much do you like to field? When the ball comes to you, are you running towards it, or are you hoping someone else is going to do the hard yards for you, is found out. And I think today was one of those days where it just felt like maybe some of the players were I don't want to say one in the other direction, but we're hoping the ball didn't come to them, right? And those are the marginal gains that need to be addressed if Sri Lanka want to go to global tournaments and win them outside of Asia, right?
Yeah, I feel like you mentioned, there are a few who the captain feels like he needs to hide because they're not quick. See, it's like this. Obviously, no, everyone's not going to be natural athletes. But in the past, what we've seen is even from guys like Tikshana, right? He doesn't seem like a natural athlete, but you've seen him chase hard, do the kind of hard yards. Sometimes you feel like now it's more than one player that Shanaka needs to hide in the field, so it's a bit tougher. So, I mean, when you had guys like Danushka Gunathilaka in, then, I mean, he's a brilliant fielder. He's good. Chamira is good. Dishan Madhushanka is good. So when you have guys like Binura, sometimes, you can't hide them,
Yeah,
right? They are going
I
to
think
field
Benura's problem
at
was that
fine leg.
I think he's carrying an injury anyway. So I think that's, he's sitting there going,
Mm,
I don't want to pop my hamstring out
yeah.
while I'm chasing a ball when I've got to go and bowl, but I've got to go and bowl 3 overs left still, right? So, but yeah, I think this is what I mean by Sri Lanka playing on one leg. It's not just the bowling; it's the other bits. It's the other players carrying injuries. It's Patton being out in the field, knowing that he's just coming back from injury, doesn't want to,
Mm,
maybe doesn't want to stay in position of where balls are going to likely to land. I mean, people often, one of the big things I always see is people go, "Why is Charmaka Karunaratne in the team? He doesn't score a lot of runs. He doesn't take a lot of wickets." But man, like, forget that today. I thought he was actually one of our better performers. He's great in the field, right? And I think Sri Lanka sometimes we just need players who are just athletes. And I'm not trying to take anything away from anything else, but we need like nuts and bolts players, the fighters. And, I don't, obviously there's players injured and Hasaranga didn't have the best game, but I don't want to say they didn't fight enough, but some of the players definitely need to step up their fitness in terms of being able to get around the park when it comes to fielding. In my opinion, I could be totally wrong. What do I know?
yeah, the thing is, I mean, just on Chamika Karunaratne, I feel like if you if you think he's not contributing enough, that's maybe because you're only looking at the numbers. Because what I feel is what he needs to do in that given situation, more like 8 times out of 10, he's getting it done. Today he comes in after some poor batting by the middle order and he gets some quick runs, right? And we see a lot of catches going down off his bowling. I think even in the last game, Kumara put one down. Today there was a dropped catch off his bowling as well. So, those things don't come into your statistics at the end of the day, right? You're looking at his numbers and saying, okay, he's going at 8 runs and over, his strike rate is 110 or whatever, right? But like you said, you kind of need guys like him, not only for the energy he brings in the field, but just the kind of attitude he has. Whatever uh, role he's given or whatever job he's given, he's giving you like 200%, right? So sometimes you feel like you don't see that from some of the guys who are more established in their roles. Um, I won't say that, I mean, it's all perspective, right? We're looking from the outside
Yeah.
and we're making a judgment on whether they are keen on fielding the ball or whatever. But sometimes it does feel like that enthusiasm is a bit lacking. And I know I've said this, like I've spoken about the weather, but I think that's definitely a factor because we're not used to this kind of weather. And when it's cold, it really hurts when the ball hits your hands, right? I think, I mean, at some level, that's probably affecting some of the players who are not very keen on fielding. So don't laugh at me, but I mean, look, we live in 30 degrees, 35 degrees, right, every day. Then you come here, you have to suddenly adjust to 10 degrees, play in the night, your hands are freezing off, and then you get like a catch that goes a mile in the air. So, like, I think subconsciously that probably works on some people's minds as well, particularly the ones who are not too keen on fielding.
Yeah, I agree. And obviously, I've been born and raised in London, so I do not have the luxury of 35 degrees heat. And, I've whenever I'm in Sri Lanka or in any tropical country, I try and spend as little time outside as possible. Or if I am outside, most of my body will be in a pool, hopefully holding a drink of some sort that is cold. So, yeah, I think you're right. And maybe I'm being a bit over dramatic, but maybe that's what Jared Kimber pays me for. I'm not sure. Shall we take a quick break? When we come back, let's look ahead to the future. And I'm also going to ask you about kangaroos.
If you love the language of cricket and want more, then head over to the 99.94 app and you can hear all of our podcasts and cricket commentary. We're adding new shows all the time and covering cricket series from all over the world. Be the first to hear all of our announcements by following us on social media at 9994DM. Welcome to Cricket's Conversation.
So Estelle, we've lost today, but all hope is not lost for Sri Lanka. We look defeat in the eyeballs and say we'll be back at the SUG and in Brisbane, and we've got 3 more games to come. My worry from today is that I think teams would have seen us and think our strength going into the tournament was our bowling. It is not at the moment because of injuries, and maybe because the conditions don't suit us as well. I'm a bit worried about what could potentially happen against New Zealand and against England, because they are 2 teams. Well, New Zealand looked in incredible form when they played Australia earlier in the tournament, and England have just got a lot of very destructive batsmen at the moment. But the one thing me and you both have is endless amounts of enthusiasm for Sri Lanka, and I'm sure we will find a way, won't we?
Yeah, see, on their day, Sri Lanka is as good as any team out there, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not. I really mean that. Like, you look at the team now. That top, Kusal Mendes has been in fantastic form, and he's been batting like he's been playing proper T20 cricket, right? And I think that's his role is so important to the team. Like, coming into the tournament, we were talking a lot about Shanaka and Bhanuka Rajpaksha, but Kusal Mendes' role in that team is so important, particularly when he's partnering Pathum Nisanka and number 3 is Dhananjay De Silva. Both of them don't score very quickly. So he's the way he's played over the last couple of months, taking on the team's best bowlers, even today, it's kind of, you have to weigh the risks, right?
Yeah.
At that point, I'm not going to fault him for playing that kind of shot. It's just that the bounce in Perth kind of got the better of him. So that's the top order is brilliant when they get going. We have some really good finishers. We have brilliant spinners, right? The only area that we are lacking now, and that's also because of injury, is the fast bowling department. But seeing how Kumara bowled today, that was like really encouraging, right? Because everyone's kind of written him off after that last World Cup. It was one bad over against one of the better finishers in T20 cricket. But suddenly, like, you're written off as someone who can't be trusted to bowl in pressure situations. But today, what I liked about today, I will say, is that usually when Sri Lanka play Australia, I get the feeling, at least from ball 1, they're already thinking about, this is like gonna be too tough for us. We're not gonna pull through. But today they came in with intent. They came in, I think, with belief that they could win. So that was really good to see, because finally they've kind of done enough, and this team has stayed together enough that they have that belief in each other and each other's abilities, not relying on Wanindu Hasaranga, right?
Yeah.
That was what was happening.
Yeah.
But now you've got a few guys who can win you games in that team. So I'm pretty confident that Sri Lanka can pull something off against England or New Zealand. I don't think it's beyond the team. It's just a couple of them need to click at the same time, and that's not that didn't happen today. And of course, even the conditions, I feel like Hasaranga and Tikshana don't depend on spin. So I don't think it's as big a disadvantage as it would have been in the past for some of our bowlers. It's just that sometimes it's also a mental thing. Like, Hasaranga has not done well in Australia in the past, and he knows everyone's looking at him. The opposition is obviously going to be targeting him. So maybe the pressure got to him a little bit today. We don't know. But yeah, I'm really confident that Sri Lanka can pull something off against either New Zealand or England or both. And Afghanistan, of course, we can't write them off. They've got a good lineup as well.
And they've
But
beaten
yeah,
Sri Lanka in the
I mean,
recent past as well, right?
anything can happen, Mark.
Yeah. And yeah, we just need to get through to the next stage, right? That's all we need. The other thing I just want to throw out there is I think
Yeah,
there's a few players in this Sri Lanka side who haven't played in the IPL before, who potentially, if they have a good, if they play well in two out of the next three games, could end up with an IPL contract. I think the two most obvious ones are Kusal Mendis and Kamara, just because I think they've Kamara, the way he bowled today was superb, and people will be talking about that in 10, 15 years' time, I think, when they look back on this tournament. I think Mendes has just been so consistent now as an opener. The other two, I think, that might have a chance of getting a contract might be DDS and Patham. The one thing I will say, but not so much of Kamara because obviously he's a bowler, but for the three batsmen, is it appears to me the hardest place to get a contract, the hardest position seems to be opening bat in the IPL. That seems to be the place where the domestic players are most well stocked, as it were. And actually, if you want to get an IPL contract, try and become an all rounder. Maybe that might help DDS. Who knows? But I think that those are three players or four players. Sorry, I think having like quite a good tournament so far. And if they can put a couple more performances in, might be able to get to that. In my mind, I see the IPL as the next level up. We've already seen the Sri Lankan players that went off to the IPL, the impact it's having on their careers now, and how much they've developed. Obviously, I say that knowing full well Barnacle Rajapaksa has barely scored a run in this tournament. But just the way that we're talking about them, it feels like they've moved up a level. And if we can get another two or three players in for the next iteration of the tournament, then, this time next year, when we'll be talking about a 50-over tournament, I think it's this time next year, we might be in an even stronger position. But that's a year is a long time in Sri Lankan cricket, so let's not get too carried away. Estelle, the last time I spoke to you, did I speak to you in Hobart, or were you still in Geelong? I can't even remember.
Yeah, we spoke in Hobart as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
So when I spoke to you last time on WhatsApp, you were going away to a wildlife sanctuary or park or something in Hobart. Tell me what you saw, and did the kangaroos scare you?
Yeah, so I decided, I wish we had more time in Hobart, but unfortunately it was just 4 days. And I've heard so much about how beautiful it is. And it's a fantastic destination, but unfortunately, again, it was really gloomy and kind of sad. But so I went into this wildlife sanctuary, and I got to see a wallaby, a few Tasmanian devils, and lots of different other like endemic species. And the kangaroos were awesome, so you could feed them and pet them and whatever. Yeah, so it was like an incredible experience. It's like, I don't know, am I lucky or blessed, or I don't know
All
what,
of those
but like
things.
this,
All of those things.
it's
Did you see any of the big red kangaroos? They're the scary ones.
no, there weren't any like overly like big guys. Um, I don't know, they were all just lying down. So it was like you had to go and serve them the food in your hand, and they wouldn't even look at you sometimes. So, uh, yeah, but it was incredible. Yeah.
Because I've been to Australia a few times, and sometimes you get these giant big red kangaroos, and they're absolutely muscly and ripped. And they're huge, and like they're like, oh yeah, you can go and feed them. It's like, I don't want to go and feed them. That thing looks like it's going to punch me in the face. Like, I did not come to this place for violence. I came to this place for good food, looking at the wildlife from a safe distance, and potentially talking about cricket. Right, let's leave it there. Loads more cricket to come. Off to Sydney next, and I hope you're having the time of your life, Estelle. Thank you for listening to Sri Lanka on 99.94, where we speak cricket every day. Please do rate, review, subscribe wherever you enjoy your podcast, and tell your friends about it, and leave us comments. I love the comments. I don't know if Estelle does. You can also contact us on our Twitter handles as well. I'm at Mark Machado. I want to hear all your feedback. And Estelle is at Estelle_Vasu Dev1. 1 as in the number 1. If you really like the podcast, tell Estelle about it. If you've got issues and would like to give us some critical/negative feedback, you can tell me. It's fine. And remember, please do download the 99.94 app and follow us. Follow 99.94 on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook as well. We'll be back soon. Thanks a lot for listening. Bye.